episode of Cosmic Conversations. I am your host, Marla Martenson, and today I have a very special guest. Her name is Debbie Augenthaler, and she is a psychotherapist specializing in trauma, grief, and loss. So that sounds kind of heavy, but it's not going to be a heavy talk because she has an amazing, beautiful book. It is You Are Not Alone. I read this last night and I just couldn't put it down. It's a wonderful combination of story, memoir, kind of guide. There's beautiful poetry and quotes and how-to. And it's interesting, Debbie, because you wrote this book because when you were in your 30s, your husband died. And what I found that I totally related to was you segmented your life into the before and after, like it was all and my father died in 2001 when I was 39, and we were very close. It was the most devastating thing to ever happen, and my life is split in two now. It's before my death, before 39 and after 39. It's really interesting.
Yes, yeah. Oh, I mean, as grievers, as you know, it's always before and after, right? And I think that until you've gone through that experience, you don't really get it, until it happens. And it's just because there's the life you had before.
Right.
And, and for me, like when Jim died, it was so shocking and sudden, and I was with him.
Yeah. Tell the viewers about that, what happened.
Well, he was healthy. He was only 45. He was 9 years older than me, and he was healthy as far as we knew, and he'd had a physical and everything 2 months before. Anyway, he had an aortic aneurysm, and it ruptured in his heart, and he didn't know it, I didn't know it, and he was experiencing an odd sensation, but he thought it was heartburn, really didn't know, and of course I was like, let's go to the hospital, and he's like, no, I'm fine, and he died, like he just said he felt dizzy and he died. And in that moment, I didn't know that he died. I didn't know it until, they pronounced him dead at the hospital, as you know, if you read the book. But the shock of it all. So there was this whole, it was like your world just shatters and it is in pieces. And it's like, I don't want to live in this life, meaning I wasn't suicidal, but I just didn't want to be in a world that he wasn't in. And so it took time to rebuild my world and my life. And like, what was my life going to be like now? Because it certainly wasn't the life that I wanted or thought I was going to have.
Yeah.
Because we were so young, it wasn't. And but I don't think that it's even a matter of age. I mean, yes, it's shocking when you're younger, but when you're with somebody or, anybody you love, your father, your spouse, I mean, God forbid a child, right? Yeah. It's always going to be a different life.
Right.
So it's the life before and the life after.
And you described that his soul flew through the window. No, what did you say? His soul flew through the window.
Yeah. I believe that because, the law of conservation states that energy can never end.
Right.
It's a scientific fact. And so it just transmutes. And so I believe that love lives on forever. I believe spirit lives on. I believe that, it's interesting. The reason I say it like that is, and I don't go into it in detail in the book, is that one of his sisters had a dream where she dreamt, she dreamt that night, like the sparkling, went through the window, and so I choose to think that that's how it happened.
Okay, that's where you got. Yeah, she dreamt that, so that's where you got.
Yeah, and so yeah. And I was, like I said, I was with him, and he was talking one minute and fell backwards on the bed the next minute, saying, "I feel dizzy."
Yeah.
And then he was gone.
And they said he had no pain. It was just, just like that. And you were trying to have a child at the time, and it was so heartbreaking to read that, I hope I'm pregnant, and you went to find out that you weren't. But
And so that brings up an important thing too, though, is that it's not just the loss of the person and the life that there's so many other losses. That's why I have a chapter in there about the different kinds of losses. But I don't say it, like, the book is not written clinically at all, and that's on purpose, because I wanted a book that I could have picked up and said, this is me, this is what I'm happening. And I picked universal kinds of experiences, and I chose something from my story to write to that, because we all have similar types. Everybody's different, everybody grieves differently. Right. But we all, we have our own experience of it, but there are certain kinds of things that can have, certain commonalities. And one of them is, what other losses go along with the loss of someone you love, or any other kind of life-altering event that you have that changes your life forever. What other losses are there? And so for me, it was the loss of never having, his child, our family, the loss of, like, the loss of my best friend. The lot, just the loss of.
And you two had been together 12 years.
Yeah, well, I had known him for 12 years, and that's what, it was so, we were just friends when we first met, and we worked together, and so we got to know each other in that way, so it was just a really deepening relationship that turned into a romance several years into it, but that's why it was just, he was so pivotal in my life, because I was so really young when I met him, and,
And then speaking of work, you were in finance in New York. I mean, high level, high stress and all that, and it's completely different. So this, I take it that this experience also changed your life and career. You wanted to help people now, and you went out of finance.
Well, it took a while for that to happen, but when I look back, that was the catalyst. It started and like also in the book I write about 9/11, because I was in the financial industry. Right. I knew so many people that were killed that day, and it was horrific. But what I didn't know is that because I had been through I lost my husband suddenly and tragically, and at so young. And when I went to the memorials and services and to people's homes, they would be like, how did you do it? Like, if you got through it, that gives me the bit of hope that I can get through it. And also, I wasn't afraid of their grief. And that's something that really is important to me to talk about in general, is we have this grief-phobic society, and people are afraid of grief. It's almost like it's a disease you can catch,
Right.
And so you don't know. No one's born knowing how to cope with grief. And we're certainly not helped as we're growing up either in our society any longer, because people don't really talk about it. And it should be okay, because there are a lot of grievers. But to go back to 9/11, like, again, people are shocked. They don't know, again, we don't know how to do it. And I found, I could be with them. I was saddened, of course, and shocked, and having my own, experience of it. But I could look them in the eye and not be afraid of them, and really get what they were going through. And so it took time, but after that healing process from that.
Yeah, because you had to go to funerals for like 3 months. I mean, you knew so many people.
And they were holding, because they were still holding out hope, they could find something. And so, it was 6 months. So eventually I did. I just thought, I wanted to do something. I felt that this is how I made meaning out of it all, is that, and any of us, like, you can, your father died, but the fact that you can help a friend whose parent died by saying, I've been there, and they can look at you and say, well, you're still happy, you're still having a life, you've healed as much as you are, however that looks, and so just by having that experience, we can help others. And but I really became a passion, because my therapist, I went to therapy, and it's something, if it's available to you, I recommend it highly to anybody. But I had a good support group of people that listened and loved me and let me, grieve. And also, though, my therapist, it was so crucial to my healing and to help me sort through these overwhelming feelings and emotions. And that's why the book is called You Are Not Alone, because, again, people don't know. They think, if you've never been through it, they think, am I going crazy? Like, this is, I don't know what your experience was like, but it's overwhelming. And she really helped me, and I wanted to be able to help others like she helped me. So eventually I found my way, and I did. I went to graduate school and got licensed and put all my hours in and had a
it's overwhelming. I found at the time when my dad had just died, and I didn't want to be around anybody whose dad was still alive. Like, I couldn't, I just was like, okay, her dad died, she knows what I feel. So it was like that. It was just, and at that young age now, I'd lost my grandparents, and I'd lost quite a few friends from AIDS and stuff. But then as we get older, now I'm in my 50s. I mean, my brother died tragically. My
Right.
many friends, uncles, aunts, cousins, so many people. It's just like a list now, and it gets more and more. So we've got to be
Yeah.
grounded in my. You were saying, you were looking at my website, and I do all the spiritual stuff, and I'm into, I did have. I'm going to ask you about that. Any signs from Jim? Because my dad did come. I met my dad on the astral plane. I got to see him, and
Oh,
I'm kind of open intuitively and do connect with the other side, and so that's something that I'm really interested in, and channeling. You've seen, so all of these things. So it kind of puts a little magic and sparkle back in, and we know that when we're connected with our angels and guides and our loved ones on the other side, that, like you said, energy doesn't die. I mean, it's still so devastating to lose. Even my dog, I'm just so in love with her. I'm like, oh, just I know one day I'm going to have to part with you, like I did my last one, and it's just painful. But
yes.
that's the human experience, and we've got to love all out, right?
That's right. Well, we are spiritual beings having a human
That's
experience, is
right.
how to explain it. So, I mean, of course, even though we know spirit lives on and
Yeah.
souls live on, and that we are all connected on the other side. We all come from love,
Yeah.
and I feel so strongly about that. And I just, if I could change one thing in the world, it would be the intolerance that there is. But, we're all from the same place, and and I think that. That certainly helps me, but it doesn't take away the fact that as a human being, we suffer, we grieve, and
Absolutely.
it just is what it is. And so signs are incredibly comforting.
Yeah.
And if you're open to them, they do come. And I do, that's why the second chapter in my book is
Yeah,
about
tell
signs.
about that sign, what happened in bed. That was interesting.
I think it's because, can I tell you that anybody who's read that was like, thank you for writing, because I've had some readers along the way. Thank you for writing about this. Can I tell you about my brother? Can I tell you about my mother? Like, nobody talks about this. And of course, we know there is a certain segment that does talk about it, but the vast majority of people are like, no, and that's okay. It's okay. But that's why I do go there in the book, and I end it, with the metaphysical, because that was my journey and my transformation. And everybody's is going to be different, but this is just what happened for me. And I am a psychotherapist, and I heartily support whatever a client believes in. Right, that's their choice. But my sign from Jim, the first sign I got, I mean, I still hear, I know a certain song, I still feel him,
Yeah.
and but that first night that he died, it was so sudden and so shocking, and like your psyche can't even take it in. But I was so worried about him. Like, are you okay? Like, I don't know where you are, but are you okay? Like, I just didn't believe that he was suddenly, that was it. And I don't think I was as spiritually, hadn't had as, I was still at a different place, so to speak. But my aunt, who was like my sister, flew across the country and was there that night with me. And I was awake. I didn't sleep. And I couldn't even take any medication or anything, because I thought I might still be pregnant.
Right.
I didn't know yet.
Yeah, because
So
I was
I'm
on
wide awake.
sleeping pills every night when my dad was in the hospital and died. I was on sleeping pills. So I was thinking about that when you wrote that. I was like, oh.
No, once I found out I wasn't pregnant, then I got Ambien, and I did have sleeping pills. Otherwise, I wouldn't have slept, and that's okay, it's fine. But I just was praying for a sign, and my aunt was sound asleep, and well, I was laying in bed, and she was a heavy breathing. I'm just laying there, and I'm saying, please let me know you're okay. I just need, just for a minute, let me know. And suddenly, my aunt Janie said, I love you, Deb. I was laying there sound asleep saying, and she said, I love you, Deb. And I look over, and then she rolled right over and put her left arm over my chest, like Jim. And she said, like Jim would have done.
Yeah.
And I just lay there, like almost like, did this really just happen? And then she rolled right back over, and I'm whispering, Janie, are you awake? And there was nothing. So I lay there until she woke up, and I asked her if she remembered, and she looked at me and she said, no. So, I feel that very strongly. That was a way of him saying, I love you. And he, for him to say Deb, and her to say Deb, for her to use his words in the way and to do what he would do.
Right.
I felt the sign, and it was very comforting.
Oh, yeah. That's beautiful. And did you have any other signs, or was that the only sign?
Oh, I think that was like the most, it's like, my grandmother, I think I put that in the book too, is that my grandfather, she when I grew up growing up, she would talk about how my grandfather came and stood at the end of her bed the night after he died, just to appear to say, hey, I mean, he didn't say it, but, just he appeared. I've had other signs, but it's like in the oddest places, like this song that meant a lot to both of us, Harvest Moon by Neil Young, would just like be out of nowhere. I mean, it could even be like on a station where no Neil Young song would ever be playing, and like their song. Or I'd walk into a store and I'd be thinking of him, and like, I just miss you so much, and that song will come on.
Yeah.
It would be like that, and it's really comforting. And I feel there's a lot of things like that happen. But the most important signs I've had are dreams, and I've had like visitation dreams, and I had one that I write about in the very beginning of the book when in my acknowledgments. But I had this incredible dream where I was going off to write the book, actually, and taking a little bit of space. And he came in the dream and said, don't worry, we've got your back, whatever you need. Well, because in my dream I was and I don't need to get into all the details, but I've had several dreams like that where it comes in, and he can, it may be representing, the divine, whatever, but it's just the idea he comes in as him, and it looks just like him, and it looks like he did when he died, and just always has words of reassurance and love, which is beautiful. And I wish that everybody has that. I hope you said you visited your dad on the astral planes.
Yeah, I've seen him. Yeah, I knew it because it was one specific incident where it wasn't in a dream. It was an incident, and I was like, I just saw him, and I was awake after, and so then through talking to a psychic, they said, oh, you met him on the astral plane, because he came and sat at the end of my bed, and and it was I write about that in my book. It was unreal, and then I was like, oh my God, I can't believe what just happened, and it was amazing. Yeah, so I wish that was a few years ago. I wish he'd come back and do that again. But now also you do talk about how things for people not to say, because sometimes we don't know what to say to people when somebody dies. I'm so sorry, and some people said some really, unconscious things to you at the funeral or whatever, like, oh, well, you're young, you'll meet somebody else, or
absolutely
right. Yep. So you kind of help people to know, just saying, I'm here for you. I'm sorry. That's it. Just say you need to keep blabbing on, right?
Yeah, even if you don't know what to say I'm sorry, but don't grasp for something to say, because it can come out.
Or he's in a better place. I hate that one.
No, he's in a better place. Or like for parents that have lost a child, and people say, at least you have 3 others, or you have another one. It's just, don't say things like that.
No.
Don't. And that's it's incredibly helpful to anyone who's grieving. And that's part of what I wanted to do with the book too. The book is also for people who want to help those who are grieving, so that they can see to learn about the before and the after, to learn why we may not be responsive at first, but keep, when you offer to do something, people will show up and bring food and bring all that. But, at first someone may say, I want to be alone, or I don't, because you're not capable of doing too much in the beginning. And just one time you say no doesn't mean that you want to know people are there waiting to help support and encourage you. So don't let one no say, okay, well, I've asked, they said no, and now that's it. And, months later, can I get you something? Weeks later, whenever, but always ask, call, I'm on my way to the store. Can I pick you up something? Do you need anything? If you have kids, can I babysit so you can have some private time? Anything like that is so helpful, but offer help. It's really needed. And the other thing is that just because 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 months or even a year has gone by doesn't mean, that someone's like, oh, okay, some time has gone by. I think I write about, and so many people have the experience of people saying, you mean you're not over it yet? And it's everybody. What's really important is that, grief is not linear. There is no timetable. There's no rule book. You grieve in your own time, in your own way, and you don't let anyone tell you how to grieve.
Right.
And I think that the best thing you can do to support somebody is to understand that. And also, I'm sure you talk about your dad still, don't you?
Oh, yeah. His picture's here in my office. His ashes are here. I talk to him. I talk on a communication board. I like the talking board, so I talk to him on there. I talk to him. And my brother.
Huh? Right, but you tell people,
my dad. Yeah, and of course, he's still my dad.
He's still your dad. Exactly.
Yeah.
He's
Yeah.
still your dad. And just like, and I talk about Jim I mean, I never, and I know that some people can be uncomfortable with that. Like, oh, again, grief is like this disease, it reminds them of their own terrible grief. And I have a chapter about that, why people might avoid you and how painful that can be. But um, it's because, it doesn't mean that you have to censor yourself. You don't have to adjust yourself. Like, I don't want to say adjust, but like, your experience, it's okay to be a griever, and it's okay to talk about the person you love. And if you want to be able to support someone who's grieving, let them talk about the person they love.
Right.
However, so if somebody is like, I don't want to talk about it, honor that. Like, that's okay. And just say, well, I'm here for you, or how are you today, or that kind of a thing, in case it changes. But just let people, I think that's like, for anybody who's grieved, and we all will at some point or another, you don't know how you're going to feel until it happens to you. So just accept that. I mean, obviously, unless somebody's really not able to get out of bed at all for months, I mean, then, they need, that's different. But we're talking about, an overall experience of grieving.
And speaking about getting over it, not getting over it, but getting on with your life, you did have to get out and date at some point. And you started doing that, and tell us how that was, because there was a couple duds, a few.
Yeah, it was just, that's like that, and I write about it specifically for like, because I had like a meltdown thinking, it'd been a couple of years before I was really ready to date again, and the first date, and it was just, it just, and this is because it's important to know that grief is not linear. They talk about stages, and I like to call them phases: anger, bargaining, depression, denial, acceptance. But we go back and forth. And we go back and forth in a minute, in an hour, in a day, in 10 years, right? Something can happen and bring you right back to where, you feel like you're grieving all over, and you're like, what is going on? It's a normal thing, because it's part of you. It just stays with you. And time and grief are really interesting, right? I mean, it's not, when you grieve someone, you can be walking down the street 10 years later and say, God, wait, is that my dad? Or,
right.
And, and so I feel that what I wanted to show with that is that besides the fact it's up to you whenever that is that you're ready to re-engage, if you are, is that night after that really bad day, I had a meltdown. I was just like, I felt like I was grieving all over. I was mad at him. I was missing him. I was mad at the universe, and I'm just like, I don't want to have to be doing this.
I don't want to have to be out there. I shouldn't have to be out there doing this. Right.
But here's the thing: is that I was able to, I had resilience had come in. I had built resilience. I had been healing, and so yes, that still happens, even though it was however long it was after. But I was able to bounce back more quickly, a lot more quickly than I could have in the beginning. There was no bounce back in the beginning,
right?
But I was able to, I had built some resiliency around it. And and now I'm in a wonderful relationship. I'm very happy, and I know Jim would be very happy for me.
So and your website. Tell people before we close out a little bit about your website. I just thought it's beautiful. It's such a beautiful place to be. You've got so many wonderful resources and stories and help and videos and things.
Thank you. Yes, the website it's DebbieAugenthaler.com, and we have what I put on there. Gosh, a long time ago was these. There are 4 videos on there that can help if you're feeling anxious, stressed in the moment, and who doesn't feel anxious at times. And they're very simple, little effective techniques that you can do easily. I use them with my clients all the time, and they're very effective, especially if you practice them, and to help you, come down in the moment and alleviate anxiety. And then there's a lot. My past blogs are on there, and all kinds of things. And I have a Facebook page called Grief to Gratitude, and we post daily inspirations every day, like beautiful, and it's on Instagram too, but these beautiful inspirational things, all different kinds of stuff, and usually a write like every Wednesday and stuff like that. And so, yeah.
That's great. Now, have you always had an interest in writing?
I've always been an avid reader, and I've always had an interest in writing, but, with my previous life, like I've had a couple of before lives, I guess. I wasn't able to do that, to write as much. I mean, I'd write in journals and stuff, but I always wanted to write this book. For a long time. And so, when I went back to graduate school, of course, I was writing academically and stuff like that. But It's so I love, and this is what I'm going to be doing now. And this is why I'm writing. It's because I want to be able to help more people than I can one-on-one in my therapy practice. So that's why this book it's hopefully going to help a whole lot more people when I can do that.
You are not alone. And
thanks. And I'm going to be writing more, and and hopefully more that will be helpful.
Wonderful. Well, Debbie, thank you so much for stopping by and chatting about this and your beautiful book. And you guys, let us know in the comments below. Have you lost somebody? Are you grieving? Do you need any support? Give us some tips on what you've done. Love to hear about it. And until next time, much love, everybody. Bye. Bye.
Thank you so much. Thank you for inviting me.